new set of lungs.
Hi, Lauren.
Hello, Lori.
So how many times do you want to restart this podcast?
I'm thinking like 4 times would be good.
If
Oh,
we
no,
didn't-
it's the 4th time?
If we didn't have
Great,
so
so
many concerns in our mind, we could probably record a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we, wow, that's actually kind of, whoa. That's actually pretty powerful.
Yeah.
One thing about recording, I mean, as a performance artist, recording is so different than playing live. Just a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And because you can hear it back and you can be like, oh, I would change this and this and this, because you can play it over and over.
Hey, so you know what? I've been thinking about this. Let's talk about why we're doing this. I mean, we put a label at the bottom. We've been talking. Let's talk about, just real quickly, let's encapsulate, why do you do this? Now that we've had a few recordings now.
Yeah.
Some that we've posted, some that we haven't.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to think of why we do really anything when you ask that question.
Okay.
It's kind of it's a mixture for me. A, I felt like it. B, good timing. I was saying A, like as if, and last time we talked about timing, not
Right.
one. Okay. So I'm doing numbers.
I hit you at the
2,
right time.
Good timing. 3, because I want to get better at showing up, and it's a good time to do that. I mean, it's needed in this time of quarantine where there's less of that.
What do you mean showing up?
Showing up, like exercises things that happen daily or weekly, or you know, things that you have to go to. There's just so much less of that. And creating your own schedule is a huge, like, it's hard to do.
Right.
It's difficult, and especially when you don't have something to work around. I wanted a piece to work around. When I was a teenager, I just filled in my schedule like crazy. And I had spent a couple years of a very open schedule while going through Dark Night of the Soul, or Dark Night of the Ego. But I really wanted to start. It felt like the right time to step on something.
So what's the point of you being on here?
The point of me being on here, I guess, is really expressing. It really feels like a new me. And I want I want to do it. It just, so many things fell into place at the same time. I just knew it was right.
I know, but what's the point? What do you want to talk about? Like, what's the point of doing of our chats? Like, how do you pick what you want to talk about?
Well, for me, it felt like a natural flow. Every single conversation we had felt like a step up. Like it felt like it went in flow and a step forward. And I wanted, and then also at the same time, I mean, is there an answer? How about?
It's whatever answer you want. I mean,
it just felt completely like the next step. It felt good, and before I had thought of podcasts with another person I was talking to, it was something I wanted to do.
Yeah, but the topic, like, what do you want to get out of the podcast? What do you want to talk, like, what are the topics for you that you want to get out? So is it really, like, is it just something that you want to entertain others, or is this something that that is something that you truly want to get your voice heard? Or
I feel like this is a challenge to put into literal words. With my music, I express myself in a metaphorical way. And the things that I personally go through, it's the growth. I know that other people are going through it at the same time. And I don't know, I felt maybe we could be helpful if somebody is vibrating at the same time. I mean, you've been helpful to me when we feel the same thing at the same time. Lori, can I just throw this boomerang back at you for a second? I feel like I want you to answer this. I want my voice heard. I guess it's not maybe for the same reasons. Voice heard, but New Set of Lungs, like the theme song we have, it was kind of amazing how that came together, because I was working with this guy from Canada, and he just sent me that, and it was after I went to a church service that my friend Lindsay, that I met in West Glacier this summer, invited me to, and I was super uncomfortable going to it, and it was Catholic church in the park.
Oh.
And right after that, I wrote that chorus to New Set of Lungs. And it gave me, before that, I guess I felt like I was in a bit of a dark place. I was, looking back now, I can see that my lyrics and the music was dark. I don't regret it, but I feel like maybe speaking that and feeling that was kind of be like, oh, I can, maybe there's something, to step on from this.
Right.
I mean, visually, I'm seeing stairs.
Yeah, I just read today, it was, or I was listening to this guy, he was basically talking about philosophy, and he was naming a couple of philosophers, and he was saying how it was a very popular philosopher and all of this, but he didn't express his own struggles, and he says by not sharing those struggles, people have a harder time understanding his philosophy. So
Wow.
they can read his words, but he says because that philosopher has passed away, is dead now. So but he was in the United States, and he was a philosopher of the United States, which is actually, and he was popular, but he is dead now. And so what he talked about, and that how it influenced his writing about his own philosophy, is that he adds his own personal struggles, because it can help someone. I think you integrate what the person has to say in their philosophy if you share what your challenges were. So absolutely. I find it interesting with us.
I never really, yeah, go ahead.
I just find it interesting with us, like, trying to get this started today was a little bit more of a struggle, and it's interesting how we are very open about some things, and we can speak it with clarity, and then other things it's like, no, I'm not ready for that. or I don't want to expose people like that, or I don't want to challenge my
This is
family
kind
that
of-
way,
That's very interesting sometimes. I mean, this kind of I'm feeling our past talk about how some things like language and literal verbalization is not the only way that we communicate.
Right.
It's a bit of a headache sometimes to do that if you're an artist, like, and they say, what's the song about? And you want to put it into literal words and you're just like, and it just doesn't, it couldn't say.
Mm-hmm.
Or like what a picture could say, right? Like how would we describe growing up in Montana? I remember like being a waitress at a young age and they were like, do you realize what you have? Like, do you realize they're like, we came here from Africa, like to come and see Glacier National Park. And I'm like, ah, ha, ha, ha. Waitresses.
Yeah.
But the way that if anybody asks me what it's like growing up in Glacier National Park, until now, I wouldn't be able to, you can't describe it. There's things there's gifts that you get. I don't know. You can't describe things in words all the time. And I really think it's cool to try.
Yeah.
Even with family, when you look at a family member, I mean, gosh, not to expose anybody, and I won't, but some family members I've watched in my childhood see each other and then glasses break and something happens and I'm like, whoa, I swear I was listening to actual words, but I don't know what just happened at all.
Right.
What is that energy and how can we put it into words? What happened?
Yeah.
And people find comfort. People want comfort. If we don't find comfort or a new clean ground to stand on, if we don't clean up messes, how do we move on?
Yeah. Well, for me, this podcast and soon to be hopefully radio came out of it just came out of a real realization about how my voice didn't matter and how the patterns of the people that I bring into my life stifled that voice, and I let that voice get stifled. And my first sign of clarity was like, now I'm ready to tell my story. And then we've talked about that, the hero's journey, where you get to that place where part of healing is telling your story. And that is part of this for me, is that I hope that, I'm not the only person in the universe that got their voice stolen. And so those people, hopefully, what I want to be able to speak about is that struggle and voice it in a way of actual behaviors and thoughts and feelings, mostly feelings, so that people can relate and know that their voice matters and to pull and give that back.
That's amazing, Lori. I just remembered we didn't do it, but I know we can in the future, but that you told me that one of your challenges from that course you just completed or are about to complete was to feel the energy of this space that was not what somebody intended. And that completely aligns with what you just said.
That
And like his voice was stolen, I suppose.
yeah, I think it happens, and it happens all the time, and it happens. And one of my struggles was like, how do I get that back? And am I gonna find this way out of? Because the thing with seeking, or the thing with feeling that way, that your voice doesn't matter, is that I end up putting that out into the universe in terms of, speaking and behaving in a way where I let that story be supported, So,
Absolutely. And I
right.
wonder if, I mean, okay, so I got two things that I'm thinking at the same time. Okay. First one is that, I gotta hold the other one. Is that I have felt like my voice mattered almost always.
Mm-hmm.
Even when a lot of things came up that showed me it didn't. Like, I mean, I've been a singer all my life, and I was not the singer who won things. I didn't catch on to, what it took to sing to win awards, or I didn't get it. And it didn't really affect me in a way that let me down at all. It just, I don't know. And that could be a million things. And I think that there's just so many different, but I also kind of realized through talking to you that there are things that I've covered and not known about myself. So blind confidence can do you harm too. And
Yeah, where you're standing on, it reminds me of that biblical, you build your house on sand, or build your house on rock.
Yeah, so I had to, I mean, there is and always was depth there, but if there's no like connection with the depth, that's where there's emptiness. Because I've definitely never been empty, just disconnected. Second thing I wanted to say, and maybe this is too quick a shift, but I just have to say it before I forget it. So Frank Lloyd Wright, I saw this kitchen set that just looked so cool. And I showed it to Tim, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And it just said, I'd never even thought about it, but it said, inspired by art by Frank Lloyd Wright. And I was like, what is Frank Lloyd Wright? Right? So I followed that, and I saw his buildings and his art, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is literally me. I was like, the colors, everything about him, I was just so interested. I was like, what is this person?
Oh, really?
How could I was so stoked. I was like, what is this person? It made me feel like Michael Jackson again, really.
Yeah.
Like when I discovered Michael Jackson at a young age, I just loved the Jackson 5. But I discovered my new Michael Jackson. And I do believe that heroes can be unproductive depending on who you are. I'm not saying that everybody should have a hero, or I don't think that people should put people
up on a pedestal.
No.
I think it's loved. I think I love that, to be able to see yourself in someone else. And
so what happened was I looked him up, and I found this crackly old video of him talking, and oh my gosh, Lori, the way he talked and the things he talked about, I just was like, how has this person, like, no one knows about him. He spoke so truly and so plainly about everything. Just, I don't want to say, well, I'll say from spirituality to politics to everything. And it just reminded me, it just felt like me. And I just felt so validated by this person, I guess would be.
Right.
I felt so, and what was so cool is that his art, I made it like a friend with somebody I don't even know.
See, I think
It felt really cool.
Well, and that I've never heard you be so excited about somebody before.
I had never either.
That sounds like when I would get a job in a different, but see, the thing is like when I would get a job and I would get into there and I'm like, wow, these people are just like me. Like you get into that crowd or that group. And I remember feeling that, wow, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just like you guys. Like this is my whatever.
I feel like people sometimes talk about soul groups nowadays.
Okay.
Or do you hear that word?
Tribe, but yeah.
Yeah. Soul tribe. Oh, I like that even more. But like musicians that I work with, like I've heard that word tossed around. And it's cool, but man, that really stuck out to me. And how can you not follow something like that? I mean, Lori, you stuck out to me.
Yeah, I still don't know why you called me. That
Today?
I'm looking up this guy. Well, no, just in general when you first started calling me, because that took a lot of bravery. You didn't know me. Oh, I saw a show on this guy.
Did you?
Oh, for sure. I don't know why.
I said to Tim,
Or maybe I saw
Frank,
a movie.
I said Frank Lloyd Wright. I was like, if I was a guy from the 1800s, wouldn't I like Leo Valentine, Frank Lloyd Wright? I was so like, oh, I just really. There's some interviews. No, I think there's just one, actually. His architecture, and I'm actually I love architecture. It's not the art I pursue. I just toy with it. But, oh my gosh, he was just, I don't know.
Yeah,
he might have been a narcissist. I don't know. I really don't know. If he's problematic, I just connected with, it's just so cool when you connect with somebody that you didn't know, and you just follow it through. You just see it through. And it was so cool. I was just like, I looked up his houses and this kitchen set, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's literally what I've been trying to tell everybody. Every time. It was so specific. And then the way he talked was similar. Come on. Like, you're like,
I
wow.
watched an interview on him, and he talks, to me, he sounds like, wasn't he very innovative in the way I think he taught, when the interview that I watched, I don't think there's much on him. Maybe you told me about him earlier. I don't know.
I think I must have. I was really excited about him one night, but I really wanted to keep him to myself because I was like, it was so new, and I was like,
because I don't remember you telling me to look at him, but I do remember I watched the interview on him, and yeah, he's fascinating.
Oh, and then I always remember he said function before form. That's one thing I remember, but I really don't know enough about him. I like respect him in this way that I need to know more about it. It's just cool. It's just cool, and I think that you meet people along the way sometimes it just comes along so rarely. But if you got your eye out, you'll find things like that.
Yeah. I think it helped me tolerate the other people better. Because
Yeah.
if it just kind of adds to your self-esteem when you see other people like you. Like I worked at a Native American youth alcohol and drug rehab place, and they talked about that a lot, like having them know somebody who was also that looked like them, talk like them. It's, you're I know that's race and you're talking about something else, but it's along those lines still.
No, it's absolutely what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's along those lines where
And honestly, could you imagine if everybody was looking for that? I kind of assumed when I was a child, I mean, ignorance assumes. Is that true? I think ignorance assumes.
Okay.
Like a child assumes. They have to. What else is there to go on?
Okay.
So if I assume that people are like me, I mean, that's the best way I can grow. What am I going to do? Question? No, you can't just start with questioning. You have to assume something first.
Right.
But then when you realize that, you can find people who I don't know. There's just so much connection to be had. I feel like people who are problematic often have or look like they have a toddler concept. No. Toddlers can't say, no, give me some time to think about that.
Right.
Please. They just say no. They don't know why they're saying no. They want to develop their ability to make choices. So if somebody says no to you, I guess we can really... That's what's tough about dealing with problematic people is they say adults are hardened toddlers.
Right.
I don't know if they say that, but they feel like they're hardened toddlers.
Well, they get solidified in their perception, yeah.
So, yeah. So you say, so if somebody says no, I mean, the greatest fear of a person, it seems to me, is wasted time on something that is not fruitful.
Exactly.
That you give time to something and there was nothing to be gained. And
or what capitalism says to be gained. Yeah.
What does capitalism say? What do you mean?
So what you're talking about, like what fruits are you being judged on? So very oftentimes art is judged on that. Why are you wasting your time on that? It's not like you're going to make any money.
Well, I actually am talking from the place of if you could actually make an impact on a person, who can make an impact on others.
Oh.
Like breaking a person. If you can't break a person, can you really be friends with them? Can you really, or are you just like a dog?
What does breaking a person mean? You mean?
It means like creating trust, like in some way you saw their inner child and they saw it in you and you guys decided that you were going to trust each other and move forward and try. And if somebody breaks that trust, that new trust, then sometimes, I mean, you trust as an adult relationship, you trust that person to create a deeper trust. But if you pierce that new trust, you create a deeper wound. And that's what's so touchy about relationships with somebody on the narcissistic spectrum disorder, but they're already, so it's like, who's using who really? Are the narcissists really using you if you're the person who gains at the end? I don't know. Have you created a deeper wound? Well, if the wound's already created and they're already just like slashing themselves left and right about, I mean, they can't even, I mean, actually, they probably, if there's really that deep of a wound, the glass just gets thicker. You just thicken the glass. So what have you done? So it's kind of a fair affair if you are entangled with a narcissist. And I guess that's why it happens, because energy works that way. But the narcissist ends up looking like they don't feel anything, but you feel deeply hurt about it. So maybe that's why people who go through it end up going through something spiritual.
Yeah, there's a couple, so that wound, that person, it's not like that person is going to know that what wound you're actually opening. So
Which person doesn't know? They both don't.
The narcissist.
Maybe.
Yeah, but let's just talk. So the person the victim, hopefully, eventually, usually, typically, wakes up to it. Otherwise, they're not being abused, right? So the victim eventually discovers that something's not right. It may take a really long time, but it's not abuse if they don't at some point know that their head is being pushed underwater.
So that they would maybe be the last catalyst, that last narcissist. I would say that it's probably rare that the first person, like the first narcissist, is in somebody's adulthood. Like it's.
So, a narcissist can say, they can verbalize and say, my parents did this and that, but they can't. So they could describe their situation, but they can't feel the wound. They can't actually feel what wound you hit because they're dodging it all the time. So if when you re-wound a narcissist, it's gonna be diverted into something else. So you didn't really, they can't, they're not gonna link the two. They're not gonna go, oh wow, because you called me this name, it reminds me of when I was in my crib and my mom never came to me. That
yeah.
So
wait, that narcissist shaming. No, seriously, it's actually just so sad. You're right.
No, I'm not shaming them. I'm just
no,
saying
I'm not saying that. I was just thinking in my giggling about it. Like, you're so right.
No, so everyone does this, but it's different. We have to just talk about this, just one thing. So so it's diverted. So that's the whole projection. It's distracting. They aren't consciously doing it. It's very unconscious. When I was talking to someone about their situation and trying to get them to go back to that state, they can still talk about it. My mom did this, my dad did this, but they can't feel their way through it. And
I can remember the eyes. Like, I can even remember looking back and seeing the wounding. I can remember being so blind that somebody actually was trying to reach out. And that's tough to remember. That I was young enough and blind enough and narcissistic enough in my behavior that I wanted a certain thing, success in my music, that I was not even paying attention to that person's emotions. So I remember I just have flashbacks all the time of somebody talking about their wounding in just a little way, and then just remembering seeing the eyes, like, do you know what I'm saying? And maybe in just so no, like I really was just like, oh yeah, totally, like nothing, just nothing.
Yeah, it really just gets kind of tricky, because right in there, what happens is that person is trying to get you to parent them. So it's a little bit different than just sharing an experience.
Yeah.
They're exposing themselves in a way to flip the titles or whatever, and trying to get you to parent them, and you were in no way, shape, or form at the age in any way to parent that person.
Yeah.
So
I'm like, I bring you water like after our shows, so you know.
Yeah, and
it's more like I do what I can. That's my personality.
right.
I'm not gonna be open to. I really just haven't been open to what anybody wants from me. I give what I can. That's a huge thing in how I feel.
Yeah. Part of that is your age, and part of that is, I don't know. You'll have to, I guess I don't want, that's something you'll just have to work out. But for me, it's just been, I've never been having to go through feeling that I've been stifled or controlled in any way. In my world, there's like been way too much freedom, in the sense of, the lack of because when it's called nurturing. So when you're nurturing someone, it's good for a child to have healthy boundaries, and not just rules, but boundaries. And to me, I didn't have anything to grip onto. And when there's no discussion, there's no help with how to think this through or how to work this out. And then the only feedback that comes back when I do verbalize, or when I try to choose something that I like to do or want to do, and then the feedback is all negative. That's ridiculous. It's all negative. So then I lose that grounding, and then I'm trying to grab onto something else. So to me, it was like, in my life, like taking the hands of the wheel was kind of feels like I got this visual of just plugging your nose and jumping in the water. It felt like I was starting over, and no matter what anyone else says, I'm going to create a self. I'm going to finish my degree in psychology. No matter what anyone else has said, I've got to create a self at some point. That's what it felt like. That's a visualization. It's plugging my nose and jumping in the water. I'm just going to...
I love that visualization, because I can just picture that all day, every day. I just love jumping in the water.
Yeah.
With my nose plugged.
Which I don't know why that comes, but that's... Because it doesn't feel like the carpet being pulled. Like, I feel like I've had the carpet pulled out from underneath me so many times, where I just didn't ever understand. I feel like I'm just always grappling for reality. I was just always, where can I place myself? And then when I got challenged, I was like, I didn't have anything to fall back on, right? It's that strength of your ego or strength of yourself where you have...
Well, so you didn't feel like you had the carpet in the first place.
Right.
You felt like you had a carpet to give?
Well, I think you made a really good analogy where you're like flying on the magic carpet with Aladdin, and you said, well, it's not even your carpet to begin with. So yeah, for me, in my experience, I was always trying to like wait for someone to tell me or
What my
give me the
experience
carpet.
felt like, my literal experience, I have to say it right now because I've never seen it this way or felt it this way. But my experience that woke me up felt like I was on a carpet with Aladdin, and I pulled the carpet behind under me, and that I latched on to the next thing that I could grab, like the windowsill of my house, and I used all my muscles to pull myself up, and I was like, the hell? And Aladdin kept just like, and I was just like, I'm not gonna fall, but I know about the carpet. But like, that was weird. That's what it felt like. Or that I jumped off. I don't know, but I did I don't know. What's the difference between grasp and grapple? Is grapple a word? I think it's a word.
So like when I say I want to be a social worker, and I feel like I'm holding on to some type of reality, and then someone comes back and ridicules
engage in
that.
a close fight or struggle without weapons. We like it.
Grappling, like I'm going, oh crap, and my reality is kind of floating away, and I'm trying to reach for, let's say, a thought form that would hold that reality, and I couldn't. Like, I just didn't have anything substantial enough to say why I should keep going into psychology. So when I was out on my own and I was like, okay, I'm starting over. I like psychology. I'm going to finish. That was just my first steps of, no matter what, I made it spiritual. I made it like trying to figure out intuition and energy. And I was like, I'm just going to finish what comes to me. Absolutely everything that comes to me, I'm going to finish. And so, and that meant what kind of parent I was going to be, or, or student or whatever. If I felt that nudge, I was just going to follow through. And obviously sometimes I would kind of fall away, but that's where my determination came from, and I definitely would say that's part of my character, is determination.
Have you heard the quote? I mean, Tim says it often, actually. I don't know where we heard it, but follow your excitement.
Yeah, I'm just getting that.
Really?
Yeah,
we heard it so long ago.
Yeah,
oh,
but
cool.
That didn't make sense to me. That didn't make sense to me. What made sense to me was that I called it inspired goals. So to me, I'm not saying that that's wrong or anything. I'm just trying to describe my experience. My experience was more like coming from a place where there is no emotion. And if I felt that, to me, that's where inspiration lies. And if I felt inspired, and then I would kind of test it out, I didn't want it to be any part of my ego or caught up in old patterns or old thought forms, which is where emotions and feelings come from. And so I wanted it to come from inspiration. And if I was inspired, I would, which I was a Jesus follower, so I would give Jesus the credit, and I would follow through no matter what. No matter what, I would follow through. And I don't have those struggles anymore. I don't have to have those things. I'm not on that battleground anymore. So, but I remember what that feels like. And I came up with all these words to describe it, and all this reasoning. Like, I would call it clean thinking, clear mind, inspired goals. Yeah.
It's so interesting that all these words, I mean, they can turn on or turn off a certain person and just mean the same thing. Like, those words are not in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at something, I've been looking at it for an hour, and it's just like this piece of wood, like in this shed. There's just, I mean, it's gnarly.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't taken down that giant spider. I really haven't. I need to tell Tim to do it. It's disgusting. But it's like a piece of wood. So I got this old 90s like TV stand. It's amazing how far TVs have come.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so deep. I got it from my parents
Mm-hmm.
when we were designing this house we were selling. But there's this piece of wood that I was sanding, and it looks like this guy with his arms up in a curvature. And it's the only piece that looks sanded, and he just looks like he's doing like, hey, yay, you know? And you get a feeling from that kind of thing.
From the shape and the feel
Yeah.
of the wood and the...
Absolutely. Like, I've been looking at it often during this conversation, or maybe like 4 times, and it just looks like, it's like looking at shapes in the clouds that can give you hope or give you, well, if somebody's looking at shapes in the clouds and they see cruelty, it's not something I've seen. Is that something?
I don't know. It
People do.
depends. Yeah. People would see all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really...
This for me, and even with the radio station, for me, it's hopefully the expansion will take.
Well, Lori... No, go on.
Well, we'll take those that ability, because everyone's trying to get to a place where they can consciously create.
I was just thinking
So now I
about your
kind of want
ability.
to prove that.
Lori, I just realized your ability because you just stopped the conversation 4 times. And it started moving into a place the last time that you did. You were right. Like, you've said to me that you feel energies, and I mean, until you really understand. I mean, who could jump into Lori's body? I don't know. Nobody.
No set of lungs.